Let's get crazy. Let's get nuts. Yes, honey, we are talking about Purple Rain, 35 years of it, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Loose with my girl, Angelique Jackson. Stay right there.
You're tuned into Black Hollywood Live, the world's first digital broadcast network devoted entirely to urban entertainment and pop culture. Tune in right now.
Oh, that music kind of grows on me. It's like, hey, hey.
It's a good, intro. Now we're just wasting time.
I know, now we just acting stupid. Hello, everybody. This is your girl, Carla Renata, a.k.a. the Curvy Film Critic. Welcome to episode 70. Oh, my goodness. Of the Curvy Film Critic here at Black Hollywood Live. And Angelique Jackson is here to share it with me. Thank you, girl, for coming back.
Thank you. I didn't realize it was such a momentous occasion. I feel like I should have brought a cake or something.
Girl, no, it's all good. I don't roll like that.
For 100,
when I hit 100,
we're going to do something
special.
When
I hit 100, it's going to be off and crack-a-lacking.
Yes.
But for right now, we're good. Woo, child, it has been a busy week. It has been all about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and all that drama. And LUCE, and there was some drama with that. And I did a Q&A, moderated that at the ArcLight with Kelvin and Julius. But before we get into all of that, we're going to play this interview that I did with Kelvin and Julius about LUCE. And then Angelique and I will talk about LUCE, review it, and get into Prince and all those other things right after this. I have to tell you, this movie messed me up.
That man, right?
No. You messed me up for real. But the movie in general just kind of messed me up. And this is why. It messed me up because even though the word loose means light, it was very dark. But what was really messing me up is the fact that it was such a dark subject, but you were giving that darkness with a smile on your face, and it was creeping me out. What was that like for you to portray that type of character? Because that's different than some other stuff I've seen you do.
Yes, it's usually a little bit more pure and innocent. And he's like the illusion of innocence. But that's the weird thing. It's really not an illusion. He is just a 17-year-old kid. He's just very intelligent, and he knows what he wants, and he's kind of tired of the system telling him what he needs to be doing and the expectation of black excellence and all these other ideas being placed on him. He's like, what is power and privilege, and who has it and who doesn't have it, and where's mine,
Kelvin, your trajectory thus far seems to be these characters who perfection is placed on them. Mm-hmm. On LUCE, the perfection is placed on him that he's an excellent student, that he has to be what these adoptive parents want him to be. And in Monsters and Men, he was the first person in his family to possibly graduate from college. Mm-hmm. So there was that perfection placed on him with that. So kudos to you on that. How close to this is your story?
Well, I was not a former child soldier, and I certainly have not engaged in anything that is suspected that LUCE does in this movie.
That's good to know.
Otherwise, my next interview is, jail coming my way very soon. Exactly. The government rolls up index and like, all right, cuffs. But I am an immigrant to this country. I was born in Nigeria. I moved here when I was 10. I moved to Arlington, Virginia. I was
familiar with the area. I'm a graduate of Howard.
Oh, all right.
Oh, HU.
There you go.
My son. Okay,
my
sorry.
mom
I deflected.
And my sisters took classes there.
Okay.
Because we lived in D.C. For a few years as well. Mm-hmm. That sense of emotional and psychological dislocation that LUCE is dealing with, being in this new environment, with those sense of expectations. Mm-hmm. I was also a debater, and I also had expectations thrust on me of what you're supposed to represent and how you're supposed to be different from what the worst image of blackness is. All those things were thrust on me. I struggled with the kinds of things LUCE struggled with. So that was personal. And I think despite the differences in the, some of the details of it, it's the emotional texture that stays consistent. And I know some of your experiences as well, where you have a familiarity with that emotional texture too. So I think we were all bringing, and so did Octavia. I think we were all bringing that to the table with this.
I think this is the perfect film for right now, especially in light of what's happened the last couple of days with our government, with them storming people's homes that are immigrants and literally dragging them out of their houses, dragging them out of their places of work. How do you think the release of LUCE is going to, for both of you, how do you think that's going to affect, how this film is going to affect society, knowing what we have going on right now? When the play was written, it was written during the Obama administration. So now we got a completely different opposite end of the spectrum happening. So how do you think this is going to play when it hits?
That's a big question.
I know. Sorry, I had to ask.
No, it's a big question, but it's an important question. I'm anxious to see how it hits. To truth be told, I'm not sure how it's going to hit. It's tricky because on one hand, we're in this heated moment, and we're talking about immigration. We're talking about the way people are vilified. And you have this character who's incredibly complex, who's a mixture of the light and the dark. And he represents the best of what being an immigrant is, and he represents the threat that an immigrant also presents. But the ultimate question isn't solely good or bad. I think the ultimate question should hinge on, if we're going to invite people into this country and to be a part of the American community, should we not expect them to be human? Should we not expect them to contain the multitudes that all people contain?
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent
point. And negotiating that, I think, is going to be the challenge. The other component of it that I've thought a lot about also is what we're seeing now, which is a shift in power from one generation to another, and a shift in definition of what this country is and also what liberalism is. And that's what you're seeing with, Pelosi versus the squad, right? It's not that big of a difference between Harriet and LUCE.
Nope.
And it's that idea that you all had your time. Now it's our time, and we want to shape a new country and a new culture that isn't just professing values of inclusivity, but is living values of inclusivity, that isn't just celebrating symbols, but is actually willing to make the sacrifices necessary to create the culture that we live in. And I think that's at the core of the disagreement between LUCE and Harriet, and it's also at the core of a lot of the conversations we're having in this country. And it's important for us to be cognizant of that, to be able to fully have that conversation. And that's what I hope this story provides, an opportunity for people to have more of those conversations. What the answer is going to be, I don't know. The movie doesn't know, but it's up to us to figure that out.
Absolutely. Let's talk about white privilege for a second, because that's real in life in general, and it's definitely real within the confines of this picture. There's part of me that felt like they really, at the core, thought they were doing the right thing, and then there's that moment where they both realize that maybe they didn't do the right thing. And then there's that shift with the dad and with the mom, where the dad is like, I can't go along with this, but the mom is like, but this is my son. I don't care where he came from. I don't care what he did. I don't care what he's going to do. He's my son regardless. How do you think white privilege in America plays into that thing? Because it was really real, and it was really hardcore, and it was the fact that white people feel like they can just do whatever with no consequences attached to it. Y'all like, uh-oh.
No, I mean, you want to take that first?
Y'all looked at me, and Kelvin's like, oh, dang, I gotta go first. Why you asking me these deep questions?
No, I mean, that's what we're here for. That's what
Absolutely.
the movie's about, so.
Yeah. You want to sing this time now, don't you? You just want to break out into a song, right? Sunshine of My Life or something like that?
You hit the nail on the head when you said sometimes it feels like these kinds of people don't have to deal with the same consequences as everybody else. And what I think is fascinating about the trajectory of both of these characters in the movie, at the end of the day, the conversation that they're having will always exist on a conceptual level for them. Well, what if this happens to our black son? What if that happens to our black son? But never having lived that experience, or having dealt with the fact that if you are of a certain group and you make one mistake, you have one strike against you, you're out.
Absolutely.
It's not something that they can ever fully appreciate. And that's why they can equivocate so much about what they believe. Harriet ain't going to equivocate. Harriet's like, no,
it's black or white.
This is the truth of it. And because she's lived it. And ultimately, to go back to your question, that is what white privilege is. Not having to make that kind of stark choice between the black and white, but to be able to assume that you can make these choices and decisions or have these things happen to you, and there's going to be a spectrum of consequences to it. I read so many stories of things that happen, right? Things that happen to some of LUCE's character, and you hear, well, the kid got a light slap on the wrist, or, they try to rationalize what it was. Well, that shooting, it was just a lone gunman. It wasn't, it wasn't a Muslim terrorist, or it wasn't another, savage inner city young black youth. So there's ways things can exist on a intellectual, uncertain, open to interpretation plane. And the privilege is not having to fall into one of these boxes. But the reality for those of us who live outside of that privilege is not only will you fall into one of those boxes, you might never get out of it again.
We're like, Let's talk about your relationship with Harriet, because Harriet was always looking at you with one eye open. Harriet never ever really gave you the benefit of the doubt. And what I really want to talk to you about is that very last scene that you have with her, where you walk into the house and you see the writing on the glass that you put there, but you were trying to act like,
You're 100% certain he put it there?
No, I'm not. That's what I'm saying. The film messed me up. I'm not 100% certain about nothing. With this movie, like, there's some movies where it's really cut and dry, and you're like, okay, this happened. Let me tell you something. This movie messed me up. I didn't know. It's like I said when I reviewed this. This is one of those films that it leaves your head swirling way after the credits have rolled. You're still thinking about it.
Our heads are still swirling, and we were involved with making it. No, we were just talking about it, because every time you think about an action a character takes or the result of a situation, and you take a step out of your perspective and think about the counteraction, then it becomes messier. And that's what I think was powerful for all of us about wanting to tell the story. Part of what the movie is trying to get at is this idea that there's more than one side to every story. There's more than one truth to every person.
This is true.
And when you put people in boxes, you limit their human potential.
I want to go back to Harriet one more time.
Yeah.
Did either one of you have a teacher like a Harriet, that one there's always that one teacher, that one coach, that one somebody in that school situation that is always got one eye open and has always got one eyebrow raised as something that anybody is doing? Did either one of you ever experience somebody like that?
I had a teacher like that. I grew up in the South. I grew up in New Orleans, and I went to a private school. And when I went there, it was a complete culture shock. It was like me and like 5 other black people. And the first moment I got there, the first question, they were just like, "What do your parents do? Why does it matter?" And they were just like, "We don't say yeah, we say yes."
Oh no!
And it was just like, and one of my advisors was like, what's good for Kelvin, C's are good for Kelvin. And there was this immediate like, whoa, like y'all see me very differently than I've ever had to even think of myself. So now I have to adjust. But then there was the one black teacher in the school. And she was like, if you want to survive, so you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. And she would constantly just be like, why did you do that? And when we had other kids, the inner city kids that had suffered from Hurricane Katrina to try to get in school because they had to meet their black quota, it was this like adjustment always. And I suddenly became like the poster boy for music.
You had the code switch,
Yeah,
right?
I had the code switch. And so then I started seeing myself be completely different. Then my parents were just like, who are you? And I'm just like, I don't know. So
wow.
We've all had those figures. I mean, I guess, well, at least I did in my life, where you want to appease them and you want them to see you as great because you want to feel good about yourself. You want to feel like you did it. You want to feel like you almost want to be the token at a certain point until you realize that being the token is not that fun after a while.
How about you, Julius?
I never had any particular teacher. I think the closest experience to that was my parents, and that same eye on you cannot trust the world around you to do the best for you, expect the best for you, to provide the best for you. A black teacher may have, or a black parent may have. I felt that through my parents. It's tough because on one hand you want to be, as Lou says, like any other student, like any other kid, have access to the full spectrum of humanity, to make mistakes, to live your life, to deal with challenges and grow up. But on the other hand, you can't dismiss the message of those who are coming before you. Even though they grew up in a different time, they know that the world out there, and that's what Harriet is saying, ain't gonna just listen to you say, well, I just want to have full access to the human experience or the human spectrum. They expect the worst of you at times because of how you dress or how you talk or who they think you are. And then once they put you back in that box and decide that's who you are, you're done, you're dismissed. I think part of what this movie is trying to ask is, why do we feel the need to put certain people in boxes? And can we, as a society, learn to see all people as human, not just the best of them or the worst of them?
I love that. I think that's a great place to stop, because that was a fabulous quote. I'm so excited. I loved talking to them. Thank you, Julius, Onah, and Kelvin Harrison Jr. So, side note, the reason I asked them, when I asked them that one question I was joking about, they probably wish they could sing now. I interviewed Kelvin Harrison Jr. about this time last year for Monsters and Men with John David Washington. Yeah. And at the beginning of that movie, John David Washington is singing this Al Green song. So the first thing I asked him was, you can't be singing the Al Green song in the movie and not break off a piece for me. And so I made them sing. And like when I walked in the room, he immediately remembered that.
Yeah.
Do you know how many interviews they did? I was very impressed that he remembered that. That was awesome. So thank y'all for taking time out. And thanks to A24 for hooking that up for me. But I want to know what your thoughts are about the movie first.
So this movie, and I'm actually very glad that you got into so much of it in the interview, it is so layered. Personally, of course, you relate immediately to the conversation of blackness and black excellence and what it means to be able to exist as a black person in the world. But then, like you discussed in your interview, it also gets into the topic of immigration. It gets into all of these other layered perceptions about white privilege and power. And because of that, like you, I really didn't even know where my head was with the movie when I ended. And especially because they also present such a great case and hold the suspense of not really knowing just how innocent or not innocent LUCE is. And it's really interesting as you look at it, because it asks you to look at it from every perspective, from his parents' perspectives, from his perspective, from Harriet's perspective, which is something that often you don't get to do in a film. Normally it's very, like you said, cut and dry. We know at the end of the day, was he really just pretending this whole time, or does he have this darkness in him? And I thought it was brilliantly portrayed by Kelvin, like you also said in that interview, how he had that lightness and darkness in the character, and I think that's what holds it all together. Because if he wasn't strong enough, especially in a film with Tim Roth, Naomi Watts, and Octavia Spencer, it's not going to go anywhere. But you really don't know what's going on up here at any point during the movie, and it's kind of terrifying. It turns from just being like a psychological play on your own emotions to being a thriller at many moments, where I was very tense in my seat as I was watching it. But I also just kept thinking about how important it is. Because there have been many films, and especially in recent years, that have gotten into the topic of code switching, especially. And as a young black person who's still, growing up in this world, it's something that it really caused me to think a lot about, and think a lot about my growing up, and a lot about high school, and how you kind of navigate the world. And the more that I see other people get a chance to see it, the more I hope that, one, it'll make young black people feel less alone and crazy and like you don't know what's going on, but it'll also help other people other than black people, understand why we feel this way. While you were during the interview, I was thinking about When They See Us. And I was thinking about the fact that a lot of people have said that that's a series that worked because it was on Netflix, because it was a show that people could watch at home. That was a big reason why people other than black people went to go see it. Whereas if it had been in a theater, I wonder if people will go see LUCE.
That's actually a good point.
Because they don't know.
That's actually a good point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because this is the thing. Independent films this year, for whatever reason, have really been suffering. Late Night didn't do well. A couple of other films.
Booksmart struggled.
All of these independent films that are really good, solid, entertaining, thought-provoking films have not been doing well at the box office. I implore you guys, implore you, if you don't do anything else this year, please, 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 get your monies together and go see LUCE. The performances in this film are brilliant. They are brilliant. It's a psychological thriller. It will make you think. I'm telling you, when I said that film messed me up, even talking about it with Angelique, I'm still processing this movie. It's deep. And I love a film whose artistry makes me think long after the credits have rolled. That in itself proves that film was right on time and it did its job.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
Yeah, so it drops on August 2nd. It's called LUCE, LUCE. It stars Kelvin Harrison Jr., Naomi Watts, Tim Roth, and Octavia Spencer. How can I forget Octavia? Octavia's my friend. Why was her name the one that I forgot? But anyway, go check it out, you guys. It is really, it's something to behold, and you really don't want to miss that one. All right, and now for the best subject of all. The one I am really looking forward to. Child, it is 35 years of Purple Rain.
Isn't that crazy? 35. When you said it, like when she sent me the rundown, I was like, really? You sure?
35 years of Purple Rain. I am gagging, and I'm mostly gagging at the fact that Prince is no longer here.
Yeah.
Because if he was living, can you imagine the celebrations that would have happened in light of this?
It would have been insane. I mean, even if you just look at the celebrations that happened around his passing.
I'm just saying.
And just imagine if you added that to being able to celebrate the movie and being able to talk about it and being able to, do deep dives. And there have been some really good ones that have been done. Actually, Variety did a deep dive with the director, kind of talking to him about how this whole thing came together. I learned some very interesting things.
So did I.
About how they planned out this movie.
I know, it was really funny. And not for nothing, but it debuted, y'all, yesterday, July 27th in 1984. Let me just address something real quick in the chat room and acknowledge some people. Michael B. and Michelle Mybell. What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? So Michael B. wanted to know what code switching is. This is what code switching is, Michael B. Code switching is when you find yourself in a situation where you have to adjust the manner in which you speak, how you're speaking, how you're behaving, based upon a certain group of people that you may be interacting with at the time. So the way you interact with your friends or your homies is not the same way you're going to interact with people on your job. If you have a regular, like corporate or office job, you're not going to have that same interaction. It's going to be a whole different thing happening. And so in my line of work, we call that code switching. So that's what code switching
It's in that
means.
idea of like acting white. It was the
Yes.
thing that I was always...
I wasn't trying to say that. I was trying to get around it, but...
I said it.
I'm glad
I didn't
you
realize
said
we were
it.
trying to get around it because...
I was trying to get around it, but I'm glad you said it.
and especially I'm sure in school growing up, that was something that would always come up. People would say that you're acting white. Or then when you would go on the other side, you're acting black. Or,
I would get that. I would get that because I was a military brat. And
Same.
So I was a military brat, and I grew up in St. Louis when my father wasn't stationed someplace else. But oftentimes, whenever we would go off someplace and come back to St. Louis, people in my hood would be like, why you acting like a white girl? Why do you sound like you white? And I'm like, I'm just talking. Like, I'm not trying to sound any particular way. I'm like, I need y'all to take a step back and pause for the cause because you're doing way too much. Like, you're just doing way too much. But that's what code switching is. Tell me what you learned about Purple Rain, and I'll see what I can add to it.
One of the things I learned about Purple Rain, just in general, was how the director, who was at the time just an editor, went to Prince and pitched him the whole new idea for the story, that it was a completely different script, and that he saw it a different way. He saw it as, he wanted to approach it as a music story from the inside out, not from the outside in, and he literally, went to Prince. Prince, of course, as usual, appears from the elevator, and he's supposed to give him this, 10-second elevator pitch of the story, and at the end of it, once he kind of explained where he wanted things to go, which is the story that we saw on screen, Prince looked at him and was like, how did you just tell me my life story in 10 minutes? They had never met before, and they just clicked.
That is awesome.
Pretty awesome.
This is what so whenever we talk about these kind of movies, I'm always fascinated at the fact that people that end up in the movie are not the people that auditioned or were thought about. So I found out that Jennifer Beals was actually offered the gig.
Oh, wow.
And that was during that she had just finished Flashdance, and Homegirl was like, yeah, I need to go to school. And she was like, no, I'm not going to do this movie with Prince. I'm going to go to Yale and get my education. And then in the interim, Gina Gershon auditioned for the gig. But eventually, we know that the gig went to Apollonia. I also found out that they, that club that they filmed it in, the legendary Minneapolis club, I don't remember the name of it, but they shut, it was First Avenue, it was on First Avenue and 7th Street. Child, they paid $100,000 to shut that bad boy down to shoot all those musical scenes in there. I was fascinated by that, and I was also fascinated by the fact that Warner Brothers thought they had a hot mess on their hands.
Oh, I can't. I read at one point that they were asked if John Travolta could star in the movie.
Shut up.
I said, okay.
No, and
Glad
cancel.
that all worked out the way it was supposed to.
All I'm going to say to that is plot twist. Like, that's bananas.
Can you imagine?
No. I'm not even trying to have that vision in my head. That's
John doesn't want to imagine. John is like, we're good. Thank you.
Oh, no, hell no. No, we can't have John. But Warner Brothers thought they had a hot mess on their hands to the point where they were only going to show it in 200 theaters.
Oh, wow.
They were only going to show it in 200 theaters. And then they pulled 3 critics to the side. One from the LA Times, one from the Rolling Stone, and one from Newsweek. And had just those 3 do a secret screening in San Diego. When the 3 of them gave it a glowing review, then Warner Brothers decided they were going to put it on 900 screens nationwide, and thank God they did, because it made $68.4 million at the box office, $61 million more than its $7 million budget. That's why Prince was rich.
100%.
Because I'm like, it was $7 million for the budget and you made $68.4 million. Okay, you go with that. That was hilarious.
Made him a worldwide superstar.
It really did. What else did I learn about that? I learned, this is what I also learned, that I was gagging. So, we live in this age now of social media where everybody posts things immediately. Mm-hmm. Do you know that Prince did not talk about the film for a complete year?
Really?
Did not even talk about the film in the media for a complete year. If anybody, imagine what that would be like for Quentin Tarantino if he didn't talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for a complete year. Or
That'd
if he
be
didn't,
crazy.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Prince was like, they were touring at the time, and he said he was going to keep his commitments to a minimum, and he did not talk about that film for a complete year.
Did he just, like, if an interviewer asked him about it, if a reporter asked him, did he just, like, shut it down? Or did he just not do interviews?
He didn't do interviews.
There you go.
And if an interview was scheduled, they even looked like they were going to go there, they shut it down and he left. I was like, ooh.
That sounds about right. That sounds like Prince, y'all. Just saying.
And did you know that Questlove started a class at NYU, and it's called... What is it called? It's at the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music at NYU, and it's a 7-week course in Prince.
That actually does sound like something that I've heard. That's and it
like,
also sounds right.
By Questlove, I was like, and apparently he has like countless bootlegs and demos and rarities in his possession, and yeah. And legend has it that when Doves Cry was coming out, that management was concerned about releasing that as a single because it didn't have a bass line. Clearly, they were wrong.
Yes. That's kind of like the running theme of this. Like, people didn't know what they were talking about. It's just listen to Prince. Like, clearly, he's the only one who knows what he's talking about.
Child, please. I cannot. But we are paying homage here, and it's appropriate that our logo is purple. So we are paying homage to the purple one. May he rest in peace, rest in paradise. My boy Prince, celebrating 35 years of Purple Rain. If by any chance somebody listening or watching has not seen Purple Rain, you can catch it streaming anywhere. You can buy it. It is something to see. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. Check it out.
It's literally $2 on Amazon, y'all. Like, it's
she's like,
real quick.
She's like, let me just tell you how much it is. She's like, I'm just gonna say what Carla died. Let me just tell you that. Okay,
clearly that's my role in today's show.
I know. I'm living. You are cracking me up. I love you for that.
And not to mention one of the best soundtracks of a movie ever.
Of all time.
Of all time. It's the best soundtrack movie of all time. Clearly, hands down, no question asked.
Yeah. Every time you watch it, you're like, oh yeah, nope, that also, and that, and that, and that, and you're like, yeah, that's not a normal movie.
No questions asked. All right, so let's spend the last bit of this time getting into this movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, I know how I feel about it, but I'm going to let you go first because I'm going to be a gracious host and let you go first.
Listen, so when I walked out...
I'm going to sip while you talking.
Actually, I'm going to start from the beginning. The first 45 minutes... I normally gauge how much I like a movie by how much of the wine that I bought I drank. And I finished the whole thing in 45 minutes. Because I was like, ugh, what am I watching? This is so long. But I will tell you, by the end, I had completely changed my tune. Listen, it is not... I don't want to say it's my favorite Tarantino movie, because it's not. But I think the reason why it's not is because it doesn't feel like a Tarantino movie. Aside from the, of course, extreme violence that you eventually get in the film, it's so different tonally from so much of his movies that it feels more like a Richard Linklater film because it's so, like, slice of life, like, very, like, day in the life of these people. And it's completely and totally different than anything that I thought it was going to be from the trailers, from the early reviews, from what people that I knew who'd already seen it had said. Particularly, I know everyone's focusing on Leo's performance. I want to talk about Brad. I think Brad was it for me.
Okay, first of all... let's just talk about that moment where he takes that shirt off. Baby,
that also would have been fine.
Let me tell you something. When Brad
gift
Pitt,
that over and over again.
First of all, Brad Pitt is in his 50s. And when Homeboy took that shirt off, people in the audience, mainly the women, audibly gasped. Yes. I was like, well, okay, we could just like pause the frame right here for the rest of the movie.
I would have been fine with that.
I'm like, Brad Pitt is fine, but like, really, Brad Pitt, you gonna do us like that? Oh, Lord, I was a mess. I couldn't handle it.
But I thought that what worked so well about all three of their performances, Brad, Margot, and Leo, is that they're touching on something that is very subtle. Like, their performances are very subtle, like is actually kind of true of some other great like Tarantino performances. It's either they're really over the top or they're like really like not doing a lot. And in this one, Brad and Margot especially are not doing a lot. I know there was a lot of controversy over how much Margot talked in the film, which we talked about last time. But once I saw it, I realized, well, in half of her scenes, she's in a movie theater where it would make no sense to talk.
Right.
But I thought what she does here, all of the acting she does in her face is brilliant. I think the way she embodies Sharon Tate is beautiful. I get why her sister Deborah Tate likes the portrayal, likes the movie. And then Brad, on his part, I thought that he did a lot with also kind of a little. I mean, his scenes are very integral to like the plot, the storyline. But in terms of like his acting, he's just so easy. He's so easy breezy as Cliff. And he's like that ride or die best friend. He's very just secure in himself. He's not really worried about the fame, where like you've got Leo on the other side being like up and down, having all these crazy breakdowns every 5 seconds, which is kind of incredible. Anyway, I talked a lot.
No. It's all good. I agree with you about Sharon Tate. I agree with you about Margot Robbie and her portrayal of Sharon Tate. I thought it was really very classy done. I think she did a really classy job in how she portrayed somebody who was brutally murdered as horribly as she was.
Absolutely.
This is let me just talk about what I did like.
Okay.
I did like Brad. I loved Brad Pitt. Clearly, I mean, you know, who don't love Brad Pitt? I loved Leonardo DiCaprio. I love the pairing of the two of them together. I think had it been a pairing of somebody else other than them, I don't think it would have worked as well. But I like the two of them together. I love these two scenes with Leo where he has that meltdown in his trailer.
Yes.
That made me, I laughed out loud. And then the other scene that I loved is the scene where he's feeling a little insecure about his acting ability, and he has a scene with this little girl who's killing it.
Julia Butters.
Yes, Julia Butters is
She is it. Like,
and
it.
she has a couple of scenes with him, but this scene in particular, they have a scene together where it's just it's amazing, and I love those two scenes. I felt some kind of way about Mike Moe's portrayal of Bruce Lee.
Okay.
I felt some kind of way about the fact. Now and I'll say this. I say this all the time. I hate to poo-poo on people's films because who am I to say that your film sucked or your film, you know, or say something negative about your film, because at the end of the day, filmmakers are artists just like everybody else that's in the entertainment industry. They're artists. And so how they choose to display their art on the silver screen is their prerogative, because we live in America and you are allowed to do that. Having said that, I didn't particularly care for the fact that he used his artistry, and he meaning Quentin Tarantino used his artistry to kind of rewrite history. That felt extremely disrespectful to the memory of the people that were slain to me. And I just feel like I get why he did it and I get what he was going for, but I was like, how can you but I put myself in that family's shoes, and I'm like, if I went to see that movie and I was related to some of those people that lost their lives the way that they did, I would feel some kind of way about that. And I know that Quentin Tarantino's intention was not that. I know that was not an intentional thing. I know that his intention literally was to create a piece of cinema that is a love letter to Hollywood. This is somebody that was a video store clerk who became an Oscar-winning director. So it's appropriate that he finally was able to do a film to pay homage to a town that has paid homage and respected him and revered him. Like, I get all of that. But I was like,
Well, my argument to the counter of that is the idea that he is trying to make this a fantasy. It's basically he's making a fairy tale. So, and I actually, the entire time I was watching that movie, even when things start to play out in his recreated fantasy way, I was still convinced that they were still going to end up the way they ended up. And for it to not happen that way was actually a big surprise to me.
It was a surprise to everyone, I think.
A lot of people I talked to just assumed he was going to rewrite history. They really were convinced that, of course, because of the way he rewrote Inglourious Bastards and what he did with Django, they were like, yeah, clearly he's not going to let them, let things go. But the other side of it is the idea that I don't know. I feel similarly to you in the fact that I was so kind of like surprised, but I wonder if the family may think of it in the way of he's trying to because he doesn't push it too far, like
No, he
to like
doesn't.
he doesn't show like what their lives would be like had they survived.
Yeah, now if he had done
That
that,
would have
then
been
I'd be
truly
full throttle.
disrespectful.
Yeah, like I'm no.
But I think he's trying to envision a world of, what would happen if instead of this horrible tragedy happening, things worked out in our favor and they survived. But yeah, I completely agree with you that it's rough. I think a lot of people have more focused on the giant, like, screw you to the Manson family that he ends up putting there instead, kind of giving them their comeuppance that they never really received,
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly get all of that. But when I walked away from it, because I took a minute before I wrote anything about it. I took a minute before I said anything about it because I wanted to be crystal clear in what I was communicating. And I didn't want anything that I was communicating to come off as me being negative or me poo-pooing somebody's film, because
Totally.
that's not my thing. I don't like doing that. I don't advocate doing that. I don't like reviewing films with people that do that. I just don't. Because I just think it's mean-spirited. And
It's
there's
just how you feel.
You know what I mean?
There's nothing wrong with that.
And there's no need for that. But I felt the way I felt about it. I also love the fact that there were many retro references to a lot of if you live in Los Angeles, all those restaurants and retro places that they were hitting. And I was like, oh, Casa Vega. I go to Casa Vega all the time. So I was like, oh, that's Casa Vega. I loved the fact that the storyline around Rick Dalton, Leo's character, centered on the fact that this was a person that started out as a TV star, tried to be a movie star, it didn't work out, and now he's coming back to TV, basically a has-been. And that was a big thing in 1969.
Totally.
In 1969, a lot of TV stars were trying to go off and do movies, and movie stars that were washed up from the 40s and the 50s were coming to television trying to resurrect what was left of their careers. So there was a lot going on in that movie. He hit a lot of points. He really did. But I feel like everybody that talks about this is going to be conflicted. And I talked to some other female film critics that were annoyed over the representation of women in the film, because they felt like the representation of women wasn't necessarily a positive one. And I wasn't all on that bandwagon, because the film wasn't focused on the women in the film, except for Margot Robbie's portrayal of Sharon Tate. It was basically focused on Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, respectively played by Leo and Brad. It was focused on that story, their friendship, their work relationship, and what was happening with them. And I thought it was hilarious that they gave Brad Pitt a backstory of being a double, a stunt person who had allegedly killed his wife and got away with it.
And like killed her simply for being shrill was like kind of the thing. And
they alluded to that, but we don't really know.
And I that's actually like my least favorite part of the storyline, because some people that I spoke to were more concerned about the violence against women being an issue.
That too.
And the only reason why I felt like people might be okay with it is because it's violence towards these people that in our timeline did this terrible, horrible thing. So maybe people would be a little more forgiving about it with that. But then when you add in the layer of he may have murdered a woman, you kind of are like, ooh,
really?
Like maybe
he couldn't have just killed a cohort. It had to be his wife.
Did he even have to kill her? Like,
right,
I was like, where did that come from, Quentin? Was that necessary?
Exactly. Was it necessary?
Because what I loved about him was when he's propositioned by a young woman and he very nobly says no, but he doesn't say no necessarily because he's being noble. In my estimation, he says no because he's just fine being a bachelor. Like, he's like, I'm good. I don't need that in my life. And
I'm kind of glad they didn't go there, though, because that would have made me feel some kind of way.
They had already taken me with the murder thing. I was like, y'all don't add this extra to make me not like this character.
That was going to make me feel some kind of way if they did.
Were you waiting, like, for what he was going to say?
I was waiting for what he was going to say, and I was waiting for what was going to happen. And I'm like, if they make this happen, I'm going to feel some kind of way, and then I'm going to have to leave.
So upset.
Because I'm like, really, though? We got to go there? Really? I'm like, okay, I don't want to see that. So I think this is the first time we've kind of quasi-semi-agreed, disagreed or something, but it's all good. But this is what I like about that.
Yeah.
I like I don't necessarily like talking to somebody that agrees with me all the time, because when someone disagrees with me, then it gives me an opportunity to rethink my perspective on what I saw. So I appreciate you for that, and I appreciate us for being able to intelligently discuss it and not be like, no,
you're wrong. But that's also what's so
wrong.
beautiful about this movie too, is I think it does invite a lot of interesting discussion. There's so many great Easter eggs, like you said, because Quentin is such a film nerd and a film lover and a film historian. The things that he built to make sure that this was historically accurate, the production design. Everyone in the production design team, the costume design team,
They were on it.
They were so on it, and they were so detailed about every single portion
Absolutely.
of recreating 1969 Los Angeles. I
Yep.
have a friend who like stumbled onto one of the sets, and he said that like he was watching the movie looking for the part that he stumbled on. It was on the other side of the street, and it never even made it on camera.
Wow.
He was like, so they just built it just in case.
I love that. I love this.
It's
So,
real.
y'all, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is in theaters right now. It is directed by Quentin Tarantino. It stars Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio and Margot Robbie, Margaret Qualley.
Quali, yeah.
Qualley.
Who is Andy McDowell's daughter, in case you didn't know.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was like, who does she look like now? I know. She does a fantabulous job in the movie.
Very good.
Julia Butters is in the movie, and there's some other people that you will recognize them. I don't want to say who they are because it will ruin it for you so that you can look out for them. But it is produced by Universal Pictures, and it is in theaters right now. News. We got some news on the way. Let's talk about this Cats and this Harriet trailer that dropped this week. She's just smiling. So the Cats trailer dropped, and baby, it lit the internet on fire.
Sure did.
Folk were not having it. Some people were having the Harriet trailer, and some people were still feeling some kind of way
Which
about
was
Cynthia
surprising to
Erivo.
me. That really shocked me. I was actually more shocked by the negative, like not even negative, but like by the criticisms of the Harriet trailer than I was about anything.
Yeah. Did you see the memes though in the various videos for the Cats trailer?
I sure
hollered.
did. I sure
hollered.
did.
This is the thing. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna be done with it. I'm really annoyed at the fact that whenever Hollywood takes a Broadway show and they make it into a Hollywood film, they never use anybody from the Broadway show that did it. There's a reason that the Broadway show ran as long as it did. And it was because of all the dancers that contributed to that show 8 times a week that made it a hit. Would it hurt any of you? Would it hurt you to bring some of them into the movie? I'm just saying, that's annoying. I don't like that, which is why we got the trailer that we got. And the cat costumes look weird, like they were CGI'd
Well,
or
it's
something.
fur technology.
Yeah,
It's not costumes. That was the thing. When they released the teaser, everything seemed great. They were showing us the behind the scenes. They were kind of, showing everybody in their warm ups, and we were getting to see like a little bit of.
And then we saw fur.
Yeah,
Technology fur. I'm like, no.
And that was when the problem came in.
Okay, all I'm going to say is hashtag Cats Forever, and that hashtag Cats Forever is for the Broadway company. I'm done. I just need to acknowledge that my former employer, Disney, has grossed over $900 million with Lion King, the live-action Lion King, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is following it with a meager $40 million, but it's the highest grossing film of Quentin Tarantino's career. His last film was that grossed a lot was Inglourious Basterds, and that grossed $38 million.
Yeah, and projections were only around $35 million. They were kind of keeping it low, so this was a big deal. And then also Disney, they now officially have the top 5 of films of the year. And it's the first time that that's happened in a considerable amount of time, if ever, to have all 5 of the top films at the box office so far this year. It's pretty spectacular.
I love that. I love Disney, as everybody that listens to me knows. I love Disney. I love it. I also wanted to acknowledge my girl, Lena Waithe, who just announced that she has a overall deal with Amazon Studios, and she has 3 series on the air already with Boomerang, The Chi, and 20s.
And then, of course, Queen and Slim coming.
And Queen and Slim is coming. I was just about to say Queen and Slim is coming. Directed by Melina Matsoukas, who worked with her on the Thanksgiving episode of what's the show?
Master of None.
Master of None. I don't watch that much TV, so I was like, what's that show again?
There's no time. We were watching all of the movies, guys.
Today. And they're going to do a horror anthology called Them. Also wanted to shout out Miss Meryl Streep, who is going to get the Tribute Actors Award at the Toronto International Film Festival, which runs in Toronto, Canada from September 4th through September 15th. Ooh, girl, that is our time.
That was amazing. Thank you
It
for
always
having
goes so
me.
fast when you come.
Well, it's because I talk a lot. That would be why.
And so between the two of us, we're good. Tell people where they can find you and what you up to.
So you can find me at Angelique814 on Twitter, and you can follow, of course, along on Variety and Variety.com. We will be, keeping all of the news, all of the headlines going there. But yeah, just follow along at those two places. And then also I have a podcast, Love It or Hate It Movies, where I also review movies with my co-host, Elizabeth Stanton.
Yes, follow Angelique and Elizabeth Stanton at Love It or Hate It Movies. Make sure you check her out. Of course, you can always check me out right here at Black Hollywood Live every Sunday at 5 p.m. If this was your first time joining us, please give me a big old thumbs up on that YouTube channel. Go over to Spotify, iHeartRadio, and iTunes and give me some love. Let me tell y'all something. Y'all listen and y'all comment, but y'all don't never write no comments in the comment section on iTunes and Spotify. Write a comment and let other folk know how you like the show. Otherwise, you can find me across all social media platforms at the Curvy Critic. You can find me right after this over at AfterBuzz TV doing the General Hospital After Show. I want to thank my guest co-host Angelique Jackson once again for joining me. That's my girl. And until the next time, I will see y'all right here back at Black Hollywood Live next Sunday. Love, peace, and hair grease. Bam!
On behalf of our BHL staff, we would like to thank you for tuning in to Black Hollywood Live, the world's first digital broadcast network devoted entirely to urban entertainment and pop culture. Check out our Black Hollywood Live YouTube page for even more great programming and amazing content, and be sure to subscribe and like our channel when you do. I'm your BHL host, Nakia Monet, and you can find me on all social media at Kiki Boom Boom or at Black Hollywood Live. Black Hollywood Live, Hollywood redefined.